To visualize the lighting with path tracing, enable cycles in the render settings. In the Edit tab of Preferences, under the System section, ensure you have the correct render device and mode selected. For GTX cards, choose CUDA. For RTX cards, select Optics. For AMD cards, go with HIP. And for Intel graphic cards, choose One API. Using the graphics card for rendering can significantly improve render times, so make sure you have it selected for optimal performance. Loading render kernels may take a few minutes the first time. To refresh and possibly show the rendered view, you can switch from render mode to solid mode and then back to render mode again. This can help update the view and display the rendered result if it wasn't showing before. Now you may notice incorrect lighting in the scene, and that's because we have not yet imported and enabled our HDRI that we captured in the first parts of the course. Once you have imported your HDRI, you may notice that it is wrongly transformed, and the exposure rate of the light does not match the rest of the scene. This is because the HDRI needs to be properly aligned and adjusted to match the lighting conditions of your scene. Start off by changing the strength of the HDRI. To prevent the HDRI from blocking the background filmed with your camera, go to the Render tab, then under Film, enable Transparent. This will allow your camera footage to show through the HDRI background. To transform the HDRI, go to the Shader tab and select the World element. Inside, you'll find 3 nodes connected. Add a texture coordinate node and a mapping node. Connect these nodes to the rest, and now you can control the HDRI's rotation and location using the specified sliders in the mapping node. This will allow you to position the HDRI background correctly in your scene. I am attempting to match the perspective of the HDRI and the background as accurately as possible by toggling between the HDRI on and off. To add realism, we need to incorporate a shadow. To achieve this, add a plane that functions as a shadow catcher. Make sure you have enabled the Cycles Render engine, as the shadow catcher option will not appear otherwise. Ensure that you have disabled all other objects in your scene that should not be visible, as they may cast incorrect shadows and create unwanted elements in your composition. This will help maintain the accuracy of the shadows in your scene. Go into the World settings and adjust the strength of the HDRI to match the intensity of the lighting in the footage. By doing this, you'll ensure that the HDRI lighting looks natural and blends well with the rest of the scene. To avoid the shadow being cut off in the wrong place, scale the shadow catcher accordingly to match it with the background. In my case, I made the shadow catcher the size of the gravel field, which is a good approach to ensure the shadow looks realistic and aligned with the environment. If your model or its textures are not realistic, be sure to fix them to achieve the realism you are looking for. For example, in my project, I noticed that the IOR of the glass panel was too high, so I adjusted it. Another thing you can do is add noise textures to the roughness maps on your assets to make them look more realistic. These small adjustments can make a significant difference in the overall quality and believability of your scene. To get the true brightness and colors of your background in the viewport, select the camera and head into the camera settings. Open the background images setting and set the opacity to 1.0. This will allow you to see the background image more accurately as you compose your 3D scene. You can also turn up the pass part out to 1.0 to make everything else except the camera view completely black. Use Ctrl+B to mark the whole camera view and only render what's inside the camera viewport. This helps you focus on the specific area you want to render and exclude anything outside the camera's view. Make sure to remove all the lights from your scene so that only the HDRI provides the shadows. I left one light in my scene, as you can see here, to get a better view of the other side of the helicopter while I was working in the render view. However, I recommend you not to do the same and remove it from the start. Later in the course, I removed this light as well. To separate the shadow from the rest of the clip, I placed the shadow catcher in a separate collection. By default, the background collection is set to Holdout, which hides the objects in that collection from this view layer. To avoid confusion, right-click on the background collection and clear the holdout from the view layer settings, just like I did. We also want a plane that catches all the reflections. To achieve this, add a new plane and create a new collection. Drag the newly added plane into the new collection. You can name the collection Reflection or something similar to remember which collection represents what. Enable Set Indirect Only to enable reflections happening from the plane to the helicopter. Set Indirect Only makes the plane only visible in reflections in that view layer. When we added the plane meant for reflection, you can see that some weird artifacts appear. That's because the shadow plane and the reflection plane have the exact same Z position. Blender doesn't know which one to prioritize, resulting in the artifacts. Disable the visible shadow from the shadow catcher, because we don't want the shadow catcher plane to cast a shadow on the objects under it, in this case, the reflection plane. To prevent light from the ground illuminating underneath of the helicopter, we can scale up the reflection plane and adjust its color to match the ground's color. This way, the helicopter won't receive extra lighting underneath, but it will still get the correct color reflection from below.